I am so obsessed with granny stitch right now that I'm working on my second granny square blanket since September, and it's a king size blanket with 144 squares. But I've also been thinking about making some smaller granny stitch projects for the summer, like accessories and garments, and I put together a pretty big list of garments that have granny stitch motif in them, and I wanted to share them with you because I think some of them are super cute. But before we get started, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Haley. This is Bitter Kitten Crafts. This is my yarny crochet knitting YouTube channel. And let's go ahead and jump in and look at all the patterns I found. So the information I'm going to share about the patterns is going to be on the screen. I'm going to talk about the size range, which almost all of these are size inclusive patterns, but the beauty of crochet is that some of them are like adjustable per bust measurement or upper bust measurement or whatever measurement you want to use. They are they call it like made to measure garments, which isn't as much of a thing in knitting, I think, but in crochet there's a lot of made to measure garments. So we're going to talk about size range, how many Ravelry projects the garment has, which for me that's kind of a good gauge of like how reliable the pattern is. If there's a lot of projects under the Ravelry page that are successful and I can kind of go through and see like it looks good, then that's kind of a gauge of like I can trust this pattern and I can shell out the money for it. And then we'll also talk about the hook size and the kind of yarn you need and like the details of the garment. None of these are sweaters. All of them are summer like tank tops or tees or blouse kind of shirts. And some of them are free, but most of them are around like $6 to $8. Let's go ahead and start with tank tops. I am going to put chapters at the bottom of the video. If you're interested in tank tops or t-shirts more, you won't have to like scroll through. It's going to be all tank tops first and then all t-shirts. So yeah, let's start with the tank tops. And the first one that I put on this list is the one I'm really interested in making this year. I have some cotton, like natural colored cotton that I'm really interested in making this top in. And it's called the Abuela tank by Michelle Jones. And it's called the Abuela tank by Michelle Jones. So just to go over some stats while the photos are on the screen, it's a granny stitch top and it's crocheted in the round. So it's not made of granny squares, it is made of granny stitch, but you just go row by row and then you separate for sleeves from the front and back. I believe it's crocheted bottom up. And the size range is from 30 to 64 inches with 0 ease. So the largest size available to be made is 64 inches, which is a size inclusive pattern. And it's recommended to be used in sport weight cotton with a size E hook, which is a pretty small hook. So it might be like a bit of a longer project, but it'd be perfect for summer because sport weight cotton is drapey and light and, you know, best of all, machine washable, which is my main motivation for perhaps knitting with cotton more, like this garment. And I'm really, really interested in crocheting this one because the final fit of it is, I feel like, really flattering on all the sizes that I've looked at. There are 195 Ravelry projects for this garment, and all of them are in like a huge range of sizes. Pretty much every size available from the pattern is made in the Ravelry project, so you can get a really good kind of gauge of how it would look on you, and it looks nice on everybody, I think. The next garment is the Malibu Barbie Bralette by Knitting Tipsy, and this one is a little bit more of an evening wear piece maybe, or a beach wear piece. It is a really low cut little tank top made of granny stitch, so kind of differently from the first one where it was crocheted in the round. This one is crocheted flat and seamed, and you start again from the bottom up and you crochet like a rectangular panel, and then you attach the 2 granny triangles to make the kind of cups of the top. And it is by Knitting Tipsy, and it comes in a size range of 28 to 62 inches, so it is a size inclusive pattern, and it is yeah, like a little bit more of a lower cut décolletage type top. I've had a couple friends make this one and it looks really cute. They wear it to the beach. This one is also intended to be crocheted in a fingering weight yarn on a size E hook. So this one, it doesn't specify whether or not you should use plant fibers or wool, and a lot of the samples are made in like either fingering weight hand-dyed sock yarn for like a really cute, colorful kind of punch, or like stripes of cotton, but there's a lot of options with this one because if you did make it out of wool, like you could wear it under a flannel in the winter and stuff like that, which would be a really cute option. Hi, Boo. Okay, booger. The next one is the Breezy Days Daisy Tank Top by All About Amy. I have used a couple of her patterns before. She has a wonderful blog with a ton of free patterns. I've made one of her farmer's market bags before, and this is a tank top that she designed. So it's a little different than the past two, where the past two were granny stitch. This one is actually using granny squares, and it's a pretty simple tank top construction where the squares are used on a horizontal or like on a slant, I guess, on like in a diamond way. And so the two squares at the front create the two cups for the bust. And then all you have to do once you seam your squares together is just create the little chain strap. And I really like this pattern. The squares are a little more intricate than just like a regular plain old granny square. So there's a lot of options where you could do each row a different color, or you could do the squares all one solid color each. And she has a lot of samples that are really beautiful. This is also a free pattern. So like I said, she has a ton of free patterns on her blog. You really can't beat that. And it comes in sizes small to 5XL. It's recommended that you crochet it using worsted weight cotton on a size G hook. So a little bit maybe of a quicker project than the past two using fingering weight. And it has 65 Ravelry projects. And it seems like it's a very easy pattern where you just kind of crank out some granny squares and then you seam them together in the way she suggests, and bam, you have a tank top. So pretty easy. This next one is the Tulip Square Tank Top by Wilma Westenberg, and it's a pretty similar one to the previous one where it just is a basic, like you crank out some granny squares and then you attach them all together and you have a tank top. And this one is similar where the cups are created by, each cup is created by one granny square, and then you kind of go from there and do another row of granny squares. And then this one does have like a triple crochet ribbing along the bottom as well as for the straps, which kind of gives it like a really polished and finished look. So for this one, just like kind of the stats, the sizes are lumped together. So it goes from size small medium to size 4X, 5X. And it would be pretty easy to modify this one by either making each granny square around bigger or creating an extra row of granny squares. But this one should be, it's not as size inclusive where it doesn't go up to 60-inch bust, but it does include a pretty wide range of sizes. It's suggested to be crocheted on a DK weight plant fiber. The designer uses Kobu, which is a cotton bamboo blend, and she doesn't recommend a hook size, but any DK weight size that would get gauge. She gives a gauge for the square size. This one also has 100 Ravelry projects, so you could say there's a pretty big pool of projects to look at and peruse and decide whether or not the pattern's for you. The next one is the Hepatica Granny Top by Erlandsson, and it's a little bit different than the past couple I've showed, where just the bottom of the tank top is granny squares, and the rest is a halter top that's shaped using, it looks like double crochet. And it's crocheted on a worsted weight cotton. It's just like a round of squares going around the bottom and then a cute little halter top for the top, which I think is pretty flattering. It does have 231 Ravelry projects, but it's not size inclusive as much as some of the other ones I've previously talked about. It's a free pattern, so it kind of makes sense that maybe she didn't go as wide in the size range as she could have. But because of the nature of this top, where the granny squares are just around the bottom, you could pretty much modify it to add a lot more bust circumference inches by just adding more squares around the bottom of the pattern. It does give a gauge for the square, so what you could do if you were interested in making this one larger was add maybe 1 square or 2 squares or 3 squares around the bottom of the bust, and that way it would increase the circumference of the bust without like changing the pattern or really doing that much to modify it. You would just know how many inches the square is and then modify it by that number of inches by increasing the number of squares, which is to me pretty straightforward. And it also, one note is that the back laces up. It is not a completely closed garment in the back. So again, it would be like pretty easy to modify this garment to make it more than just the 2 sizes given in the pattern. This next one is easily the most popular of this entire list I've put together. It has the most Ravelry projects by far of all the patterns I found. It has 797 Ravelry projects, and it is the Kanata Kerchief Tank by Jennifer Ozses. So this is, like I said, the most popular pattern of all the ones I found. It does come in 2 adjustable sizes, so the size range is pretty much adjustable, but there's some like suggestions for the straps and like sort of the attachment based on bust circumference. It comes in sizes small, medium, and large XL, but then basically my cat is playing. But then basically you just crochet 4 granny squares and attach them in a certain way, and it makes a very drapey kind of tank top situation with pointed kerchief bottom, kerchief hem. And there are a wide range of projects on Ravelry, from like a children's size all the way up to people making dresses by just increasing the size of their granny square and making them larger and larger until they hit like knee length. So there's like a lot of flexibility with this pattern. People have made it in acrylic or cotton. It's a worsted weight pattern. And it's definitely something that I would choose like a lighter weight fabric because it has a lot of weight to it if you make it a larger garment. I really loved the way this one looks, and I think that I would really like to make it. It is available for free, so this is just another one of the patterns that I found that's available for free, which is probably why it has so many projects, but it has 800 projects. Like I said, there are so many that you can kind of look at and assess whether or not it's for you, and a lot of them are completely different from the one before in bust circumference or size. Some of them are like so large and drapey that they're belted. Some of them are like cute little tiny little tank tops. So there's a lot you can do with this pattern because it seems like it's pretty much completely adjustable, and it's a really well-loved pattern. On contrast, the next one that I found is a bit of a smaller pattern. It has 8 Ravelry projects. It's the Granny Square Button Front Top by Selena Baca. And like I said, it only has 8 Ravelry projects. It comes in sizes small to XXL, so up to a 58-inch bust, so like just coming close to that sort of size inclusive range of 60 inches. It calls for a worsted weight cotton, and I'm sure the picture's on the screen right now. It is like a little bit funky looking in the way that the collar kind of folds and sits, but I think the concept of like a button-up granny tee is a really cute idea, so this definitely could maybe use like a bit of tweaking, but the concept is really cute. This one is crocheted sideways. It's using granny stitch going horizontally as opposed to going vertically up the body or down the body. So it's a bit maybe more difficult to modify than some of the other ones we've talked about. But like I said, the concept of a button-down granny tank top is a really cute idea. I definitely think that there's some like tweaking to be done, but I wanted to include it in my list just in case it really like hits home for any of you guys. We only have 2 more tanks to talk about, and then we're going to move on to tees. But let's talk about one more free tank while we're here, and that is the Woodstock Weekend tank, and it's by Drops Design. So a lot of you are probably familiar with Drops and their yarns, and they do a lot of patterns that accompany their yarns to kind of give you an idea of what to make with the yarn that they suggest. So this project is suggested to be made with Drops Saffron, which is a fingering weight cotton yarn. And this one is a tank top basically made of like a tube of tiny little squares. So you make a bunch of teeny tiny little granny squares, and then you just basically stitch them all together and slap some straps on it, and you've got a top. And this one I do really like the way it looks. I like that it's kind of vintagey looking, and I like all the different colors they use. So this one's available in size extra small through 3X, but it's another one where you could really, really easily adjust the pattern just by simply adding more granny squares to the bust circumference, because it's literally just a tube of granny squares. So it seems like you just make 30 or so, maybe 50, just teeny tiny little granny squares, and then you seam them all together and slap some straps on it, and you have a top, and that's it, which is really straightforward. And it's definitely easily adjustable just because there's not a lot of like science going on. You just seam them up and call it a day. And this one has 107 Ravelry projects, but a lot of them are modifications of the original pattern where people have modified the straps because the straps are like admittedly like a little clunky. I think that if I were to make this myself, I would definitely modify the straps or maybe add like a knitted ribbing on the bottom or some kind of modification, because it is literally just a tube of granny squares. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot to work with, and it is free. The last tank top that I put on this list is arguably a winter or a spring or a summer tank top. I could definitely see it being made in wool. I could definitely see it being made in like a spring fiber, a linen, a cotton. I think I would love to make this in wool and wear it over like a dark brown turtleneck. It would look so cute. This one is the See My Vest by Zines and Roger. And it comes in sizes 1 through 9, so up to a 62-inch bust, so it hits that size inclusivity range. And it calls for a DK weight acrylic yarn. Like I said, I would definitely make it in a wool if I made it for winter, but the way that the samples are crocheted up, they're really cute, like colorful. Each row is a different stripe. Kind of the similar construction to the Abuela tank that we talked about at the very beginning, where it's like a circular granny stitch pattern where it's not individual squares. It's just a granny stitch motif in kind of stripes going up the body from the bottom up. And it makes like a little slip over vest or tank top, depending on like the weight of the fiber that you use, which it would be really easy to make this in like a cotton and have it be kind of like a beach cover up type vibe, or a little tank top with like linen pants kind of vibe. And it seems like a great way to use up scraps if you do go the stripey route, because I have a lot of cotton scraps that are just like little tiny clumps where I could do each row a different color and it'd be a really, really fun summer top. And this one has 70 projects on Ravelry, so sizes 1 through 9 are all represented in the Ravelry projects available, and it's a really cute pattern. I think this is another one of the ones that I'm the most likely to make of all the ones I've shown. Let's go ahead and move on to tops. So the difference that I discerned between tanks and tops is that tops have sleeves, but that's pretty much the only difference separating these two. A couple of these have short sleeves, a couple of them have like bracelet length or longer bell sleeves, but all of them are what I decided were summer tops. But if you disagree, that's fine. A lot of them, like kind of like before, you could make them in wool if you wanted, and they would be more of like maybe a fall or layering piece. But my intention was for all of these to be summer tops. This first one is the Scrappy Granny Tee by Emily Marie Davies, and it is really cute. It's a circular yoke granny square tee where each row is suggested to be crocheted in a different color, kind of going down the body, and you don't pick up for any sort of ribbing or cuffs on the bottom or the sleeves or the collar. So it's just like a raw edge granny square tee that is loose and drapey, and it's suggested to be made in fingering weight sock yarn. So like I said, it could be made in wool, or it could be made in, like if you chose like a cotton type yarn on a size G hook, which is again like a pretty small hook. So definitely a good candidate for a summer or late spring outfit. And its size range is 33 to 65 inches. So very wide, generous size range. I really like how this one looks. I think this would be a great candidate for like if you're a knitter as well, picking up knitted little ribbing or knitted collar ribbing, and just giving it like those extra kind of really professional looking finishing touches, because the raw edge is really cute, but it would look so nice with just a little ribbed cuff. And this one has 101 Ravelry projects representing all the sizes available, and representing a lot of really cool color choices. This is also another one where you could easily make this pattern like a long sleeve garment in wool or another warmer weather or cooler weather yarn, but the intention is for it to be a summer tee, and I think it'd be so sweet to make this one. So for our first free top, this one is called the Granny Bells Wrap Top by Ren Matsuuchi, and it is a free pattern. It's more of like a overlayer for summer than a t-shirt, and it's a wrap top where you have to crochet like a big long tie for it, and also it has bell sleeves, and you create basically 2 granny squares and seam them up the back, and then you also have granny square sleeves. So it's really flowy and drapey, but it would look so sweet over a dress. The designer styled her samples in like really cute ways where the color placement is just perfect, V-neck is really flattering, and it's just, I think, a really cute pattern. And there's so many different things you could do with color placement. Like each sleeve could be a different color. You could do half and half of the cardigan a different color. Like there's a lot you could do. And it comes in sizes extra small through 4X, and it has 38 Ravelry projects. But I think that as a person with like a 50-inch bust, I would be right at hitting that 3X, 4X size. So that is something to consider with this one. It's written for Aran weight yarn, but the designer used acrylic Aran weight yarn. So I might choose personally something different. I might use maybe like a DK weight cotton with the same hook size. So like a looser, drapier gauge for summer, or you could go acrylic, like Aran weight acrylic, depending on where you live. Like you might need a piece like this for the summer evenings. This next one's a bit classy. It's the Ama Granny Square Top by Maria Valles, and it is objectively a pretty straightforward pattern. It is literally 2 granny square rectangles seamed together. It doesn't look like there's a lot of shaping going on with this pattern. It looks like it's just 2 very fine gauge fingering weight, maybe a little bit lighter fingering weight granny squares seamed together at kind of the shoulders and then kind of along the body. And then it makes a really flattering boat neck granny square top. A lot of the colors that people chose to knit this one or to crochet this one in were like really soft neutrals, and the gauge is really, really fine. It's lace weight Icelandic wool on size E hook, so it's very fine weight gauge. You could definitely crochet this on like a really fine cotton gauge, but the drape might be a little bit different than a wool. So this is like a perfect kind of late spring or summer evening dressy top if you're going to an event and there's going to be air conditioning inside. This would be a great choice. The way that the designer presented this pattern is just so beautiful. Like, it looks glamorous, it looks classy, it looks like you could wear it to like a fashion event. It's so beautiful. But on the other hand, it's literally 2 rectangles. So it's a free pattern because I don't know how much science is behind it, like I said. And the size range is, it's a made to measure pattern. So you just crochet your rectangles as big as your torso, as big as your shoulders, and then slap them together. So again, like, you could probably come up with this pattern on your own without the pattern at all, but the way that the designer presented it is gorgeous and beautiful and elegant, and I thought that it was a good choice to include it here, even though it's a pretty easy thing to make, I think. Next up is the Flora Tee by Maria Collarte, and this one is a little bit different than all the others, where it is, if you want to get really, really technical about it, not granny squares, they're granny flowers. And it is basically just a bajillion little granny flowers seamed together to make a really loose, open, airy t-shirt top with hundreds of colors of little cotton, tiny little flowers that you seam together. So this would definitely maybe be something that you start in like November so that you can wear it in May, and you slowly chip away at all your flowers with your scraps maybe. It's suggested that you crochet it in fingering weight cotton, and there's also a long sleeve version of the pattern, so you could make it in wool if you wanted it to be more of a colder weather piece, but it is so open and airy because there's all holes in it that it might end up being a summertime sweater, even if you make it in wool. This is such a cool looking, like, what a statement piece. If you make it all in one color, it's a statement. If you make each flower in a scrappy different color, what a statement. Oh my gosh, I would love to have something like this in my wardrobe, but I definitely can look at it and say it's a labor of love. Because it's so time consuming, there's only 24 Ravelry projects, but every single one is stunning. There's not a lot of shaping going on in this project because of the way that you have to attach all the flowers together. It's basically just a recipe for how to assemble all these beautiful flowers that you make. And it comes in sizes extra small through 5X. So pretty generous sizing. This is definitely something that I added to my personal queue. This next one's really fun. It's the Granny Peplum by Kelly Phelps, and it is, her name on Etsy and Ravelry and Instagram is Craft and a Cuppa. And it comes in sizes extra small through 5X. It is a granny square peplum. So kind of different from all the other ones on this list. It's very much harkens to like 2015 when I had a peplum homecoming dress, and it very much harkens to like 2013 when I had a peplum homecoming dress and I thought I was looking so good in my little peplum. Like, what a time. This one's published in July 2022 though, so it's more of a newer pattern, and it is size inclusive, and it is basically assembled in a really funky way where you start out with a center granny square and then you build on it in all these different directions. For the shoulder caps and for like the sides here, you build on the one granny square you started in the front and the one in the back. And then you also attach a little peplum skirt with a drawstring, and it's just like a really fun construction. The designer used a lot of colors. She only has 15 projects for it on Ravelry, but all of the sizes have been tested, and it's just, it's like really fun, this one. I think it'd be really cool to construct something this way because it's completely different construction from all the other ones we've mentioned, from circular yoke to assembling granny squares to granny stitch in the round. This one's completely different. It's very much like built upon the one square of foundation. So I think that's pretty cool. It's suggested that you crochet it in a DK weight cotton on a size J hook. So a pretty loose hook size compared to some of the other tops we've talked about. And that way your peplum is drapey. This last one, I kind of wish I hadn't saved it for last. This is the Relaxagon shirt by Caroline Zuschlang, and it is the only pattern on this whole list that is size inclusive for both masculine and feminine bodies. A lot of the samples of this pattern are worn by men, maybe like they were made as a gift, and I would love to make this one as a gift for my husband. It is a button-down polo granny square or granny stitch tee. So it's made to measure, so there's no sort of range of sizes. You can make it based on your own circumference and your own length, and it is crocheted vertically, so you basically crochet like all the way from your hips or whatever all the way back down to your other side, and you make 2 panels and seam them up the back, and then you attach some sleeves and a little like button placket collar situation, and you have a Relaxagon tee, and it is so cool looking. There's a lot of different things you could do with color with this one, from like solids to stripes to anything really in between. This is definitely one that's on my queue as a gift. It's made with fingering weight cotton, and like I said, you could do so many things with the color placement of this one. It is 151 Ravelry projects, so like I said, there's a lot of patterns to kind of look at, from like people making it as a bathing suit cover up to like a tight fitting woman's tee to like a tee that fits a dude, which is pretty cool. This is one of the ones that really stuck out to me as being the most like professional looking and finished and polished looking, kind of like you could buy it maybe off the rack. So definitely this is one to keep an eye on. Those are all the patterns that I found. So let me know in the comments which one's your favorite. Please feel free to subscribe if you like me and my channel. Definitely feel free to share with me what you're making. If you're making a granny stitch pattern or blanket like me, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to see it. So thanks so much for watching.